Chapter 218. Free General Knowledge. The 3rd of June. After discussing with Edwards and the others, I gave up on the idea of reaching a tacit understanding with the Church of the Eternal Blazing Sunday. This might very well reveal my true intentions, making the Sauron family and the ancient nobles who support them aware of them in advance, and carry out a direct approach. That would make matters extremely difficult and dangerous. It is a pity that Grimm died in the Sea of Fog. He was the smartest among us. Descend into chaos. Descend. Only with everything in chaos will I get the chance to fish in troubled waters. Only when the Sauron family is incapable of handling this situation will the Church of the Eternal Blazing Sunday reluctantly acknowledge me. Perhaps I should give some help to those rebels, but how should I conceal myself so that no one would notice? The 4th of June, Zarachel from the Secret Order came to visit me in incognito very suddenly. And then, Klein was just feeling intrigued over the reason why Zarachel, leader of the Secret Order, would seek Roselle on the eve of the rebellion and Kutat when he realized that the 2 subsequent pages had nothing to do with it. This made him feel a sense of irrepressible anger, although the 3 diary pages didn't provide very detailed descriptions. With rather straightforward accounts from Roselle, Klein could still feel the famous turmoil in Intis that happened in 1173. More than 100 years ago, the outcome was clearly recorded in history textbooks. As a colonel, Republic quashed the rebellion and enacted political changes. The Intis kingdom was transformed into a republic, with him acting as a self-appointed consul. In the following 19 years, he reformed the penal code, encouraged inventions, and protected the Industrial Revolution. He greatly increased the country as strength and fought wars both north and south, making Lemberg, Mason, Segur, and other countries protectorates under the Intis Republic. He also made the 3 mighty countries on the northern continent, the Fysak Empire, the Loen Kingdom, and the Finapotter Kingdom, bow their heads. At the end of 1192, almost 20 years after his appointment as consul, Roselle converted the Republic into an empire, declaring himself Caesar. Less than 6 years later, he perished in the White Maple Palace, ending the 5th epoch as most legendary piece of history to date. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that there was more to Roselle's death than what appeared on the surface. It was just like how this famous historical event definitely had power struggles amongst Beyonders behind it, and that a Beyonder faction had leveled the situation, unlike the descriptions in textbooks. As expected, one of the so-called 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, Grimm, died in the Sea of Fog. In a previous diary page, Roselle had written that there was something wrong with this horseman. It seems to have something to do with the tiny island where they discovered many extraordinary beings. Not only was it a fortuitous encounter, but it was also a dangerous one. Klein thought of a previous entry and turned to the 5th page, feeling emotional. The contents of this page are of little value. They consist of Roselle's comments after drinking an 1128 Ormir red wine, the disillusion of finding the woman who had gained his adoration in his youth to be aged and out of shape, as well as a degenerate summary of a certain period when he was addicted to playing cards. The 6th page was about the same as the first one, with accounts of his daily life. However, the last one made Klein his eyes light up. The 8th of April I have to send someone to investigate the Secret Order to get more information. I can't repeat my passiveness from before. I can't let Zeratul lead me by the nose anymore. So, did you discover anything, Comrade Roselle? Since Klein couldn't find the rest of the information, he could only force himself to calm down and wait for the next gathering when the Hanged Man would hand over another 6 pages. He knew that an investigation from over 100 years ago was unlikely to help him find any clues related to the Secret Order Association. After all, over such a long period of time, other than the special ones, many of the high-sequence Beyonders would have already died of old age, not to mention the middle or low-level members. However, Klein believed that this would help him obtain inspiration and grasp the precise identity and activity patterns that the Secret Order often used. Putting down the 6 diary pages, Klein tapped his right index finger on the edge of the long bronze table, slowly moving his gaze from Miss Justice to the Hanged Man, and then to the Sunday, right? In the diary just now, there was a line Emperor Roselle described. God who created all the deities, an omnipotent and omniscient God. This is very similar to the customs of the City of Silver. Where did he hear this from? Could it be from that most ancient and secret organization which controls the world from behind the scenes? This organization was established before the forsaken land of the gods was forsaken? Suddenly, Klein had a new idea. He said with a low and gentle smile. Roselle mentioned some hidden history in his diary, and mentioned some simple general knowledge. The latter reminded me of something that I don't recall informing you all. Audrey suddenly fell into a trance. She immediately turned her body around and looked at the very top of the ancient long table in pleasant surprise. Mr. Fool is taking the initiative to mention the contents of Rosella's diary. What would it say? She was so excited and thrilled that she completely forgot that she was a spectator. Compared to her, the hanged man, Alger, was much more composed. However, the subconscious straightening of his back heartlessly betrayed him. Only the Sunday, Derek, had always believed that the items of interest to Mr. Fool contained many mysteries. But he didn't know anything about Emperor Roselle, and didn't know what this name represented in the northern continent. Thus, he just found it difficult to hide his curiosity, and didn't reveal any unusual behavior. Mr. Fool, did Emperor Roselle mention some general knowledge? I am willing to pay for this information, Audrey couldn't help but say. However, I wanted to be communicated to me privately. She added silently in her heart. Klein chuckled and said, "There is no need. This is very simple general knowledge. After reading this part of the diary as the summoner of the Tarot Club, I feel it is necessary to let all of you know this. Of course, I am very certain that some of you are already aware of this." He was mainly referring to the Sunday. The City of Silver had a history of 2,000 to 3,000 years, so it was impossible for them to not discover the law of Beyonder characteristics' indestructibility. Moreover, they were in a relatively extreme environment. Even if the surrounding areas had no lack of monsters in the darkness, there would still be times when they failed to obtain the corresponding materials. In order to pass on their heritage, in order for their city to continue on, using the Beyonder characteristics of the remains of their predecessors to create a potion wasn't particularly unacceptable. To them, this was perhaps a sacred and glorious ceremony. Of course, Klein could see from a previous exchange that the hanged man knew something. It is a pity that Miss Justice cannot always be made to pay in gold pounds, and transfer the money to my adorers. My adorer can't appear any less impressive. I mustn't destroy the image of the powerful man that Mr. Azik has created. Yes, I will give it a try when I have the chance. After all, no matter how powerful a being is, they will have subordinates that run errands, for instance. The Evernight Goddess is sleepless. No one would ever suspect that the Evernight Goddess isn't a true deity just because the low-level Nighthawks are weak. Klein sighed silently. Thank you very much, Mr. Fool. You are just too generous. Audrey replied in joy. She was originally feeling 3 seconds of regret for the coarse action of using cash to purchase the information. Klein stopped rapping the table and described with a calm voice the first piece of general knowledge. Law of Beyonder characteristics' indestructibility. The characteristics of a Beyonder is never destroyed or reduced. It is only passed from one carrier to the next. Without realizing it, I used Captain as tone. Klein's lips subconsciously curled upwards. It cannot be destroyed or reduced. It just transfers from one carrier to another. Audrey ruminated over Mr. Fool's description, feeling that there was too much meaning in that simple sentence. Her emerald green eyes turned, and when she saw that neither the hanged man nor the Sunday showed any signs of surprise or contemplation, she immediately understood that these two members of the Tarot Club had long known of this law. Only I didn't know, she thought, feeling somewhat aggrieved. But she quickly began to praise Mr. Fool for his kindness. At this point, Klein added, after a Rampager dies, they will leave behind an item of Beyonder characteristics. It could be the main ingredient, or it could be a mystical artifact that requires sealing. An ordinary Beyonder's death results in similar results. However, the item left behind will be equivalent to the corresponding potion without the supplementary ingredients. Of course, the item alone will contain Beyonder powers. They can be used as a half-mystical object. The plain and indifferent words instantly echoed in Audrey's mind. Layers stacked upon layers, and, bit by bit, it eventually reached a crescendo. Audrey thought of cannibalism and the question, would a sequence pathway be severed if the source of Beyonder material ceased to exist? She had asked the hanged man previously came to mind. Now, she knew the answer, but she would have rather not heard it. She felt like she was having a nightmare. How can it be so cruel? Why is it so dark? Audrey had previously seen some bad situations that involved Beyonders, but those situations were only caused by a person's own perverse and evil nature. For example, Mr. A or Kilongos. They didn't affect her yearning and love for mysticism and the beyonder world. However, this time, she discovered that the mystical world was filled with grayness and darkness. Wake up, Audrey. You can't be naive. Consider that the cruelty and darkness described by Mr. Fool are predictable. He had to bravely walk down it. Audrey consoled herself, easing her mood a little. She saw that the Hanged Man and the Sunday were making only habitual movements and appeared to understand what had just been said. Mr. Hanged Man is terrible. He even wanted to use this information as an exchange previously. This information is indeed worth a lot and is quite important, but it is only a simple piece of general knowledge to us and Mr. Fool. Audrey suddenly wanted to laugh a little. Her mood began to improve, and she slowly pushed all the extreme examples that she had just thought of aside. Klein wasn't surprised by the three members' reaction. He continued in a calm tone. The second piece of general knowledge, Law of Similar Sequence Beyonder Characteristics Conservation. Law of Similar Sequence Beyonder Characteristics Conservation. The Hanged Man slightly changed his sitting posture. He felt that he understood something, but he was unable to fully understand what this law represented and what it consisted of. Justice and the Sunday shared the same feelings as he did. They were unable to directly understand the true meaning behind this law. Why similar sequence, Alger couldn't help asking. Klein smiled and replied, "What do you wish to pay for the answer?" One of the ideas he had was that general knowledge was free, but any explanation required a fee. This both matched his status and didn't waste the information. Free things cost the most.